How's it going tonight, John?
Oh, it is going. It is late tonight.
I was going to say it's a little late tonight.
We're starting recording at about 10:30. So, but
This may be short.
It may be short, but it is episode 52. Welcome to episode 52. But yeah, so I had my boys had orchestra tonight, and they had a performance. So
how'd it go?
It went long. It went very well. We were really nervous for them because they both had solos in their first song, and we were, on the edge of our seat going, please just, they practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, but that doesn't mean that it actually comes out when you have the one chance to,
right.
start it off. So it went really well, which meant that, well, not just because it went well, we would have done it regardless of whether it happened or not, but we stopped on the way home and got frozen yogurt and saw some friends, and meanwhile I'm like, kind of mentally going, I need to be there for my children because this is awesome and this is them. But I also know that I've got an hour and a half of, note taking and recording to still happen tonight.
Right.
But it's good.
Well, carpet got halfway in today. My
only halfway.
Floors are in, and the carpet is down but not stretched to all the edges yet, and in the corners they still have to do the stairs.
Okay.
But I'm getting close to having the basement ready to re-put in furniture.
I bet that looks good in that other room.
Yeah, I have all my furniture that's supposed to go there all crammed into my new office, so it's kind of, I got stealth fighter acoustics in here, I think, because I've got all, bookshelves and chairs and tables all at different angles just kind of crammed around me.
Right. Well, first recording from the new office, though. It's exciting.
Even though it's a complete mess.
Well, no. Well, it's a work in progress.
Well, should we kick off with some follow-up, which I think tonight is we should just title Eric's Blockchain Roundup.
Yes, so, blockchain me.
There were a number of things. Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrencies are in the news because they are down sharply. Over the last month, week, they're just kind of tanking right now. And there's a number of theories why. But so a number of things rolled across my thing. And so I thought I'd just throw a few articles out there, just food for thought with regard to blockchains and cryptocurrencies in general. So the first one is there was a team from the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Okay.
Examined 43 different implementations of blockchain solutions. And you probably don't even need to read the story because I will read you the three interesting bullets. So they did this study, and they studied into 43 different blockchain solutions related to the international development sector, and they discovered there was a 0% success rate.
Not even 1 out of 43.
Not even one had anything close. And they also found that the blockchain vendors didn't even respond to requests for evidence of their solutions' results. Another quote. Yeah, we found a proliferation of press releases, white papers, and persuasively written articles. However, we found no documentation or evidence of the results blockchain was purported to have achieved in these claims. And the final bullet, despite all the hype about how blockchain will bring unheralded transparency to processes and operations in low-trust environments, the industry itself is opaque. So this is just one study that was presented at a conference for a specific agency, NGOs, government agencies. But I thought it was interesting as just a commentary on, this is not, we looked at 2 projects and there was 0%. We looked at 43 different projects. We actually tried. We had enough data to present at a conference. The next one that stumbled across is, this one is actually from earlier this year, but it was a report that was showing how much it costs in terms of electricity to mine a single Bitcoin.
Okay.
So this company did a research report, and they looked into the cost to mine one Bitcoin in 115 different countries, and they based it on the average electricity rate. So it's not an exact science, because they got government data from websites or utility company data or reports from different government agencies on their general costs. And then they took...
But it should allow you to compare apples to apples in terms of,
exactly.
if it takes X many kilowatt hours to hypothetically mine a Bitcoin, you could then, compare costs. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so they took a few of the more popular mining rigs, and they were able to then calculate the numbers on how many days it would take to mine one coin, and then how much power it would use. So in the United States, the average cost to mine a single Bitcoin was $4,758.
Wow.
The current, I will give you an up to the second price of Bitcoin at this point, $3,386. So according to this report, it is no longer worth the cost for the average U.S. citizen to mine Bitcoin. You're losing money for every Bitcoin you try to mine.
Wow. So now that is only considering the marginal cost, aka the electrical cost. It's not including the price of buying the Antminer in the first place.
Correct.
But also, I guess if you could somehow drive it off of a solar rig, or if you had your own local power.
Right. And the same report actually spun off of one that was done by how much it costs per U.S. state. So if you were to mine in different states, then your cheapest country and your most expensive country to mine Bitcoin in. Venezuela, it costs $531 to mine Bitcoin. So
wow. A lot of cheap energy.
All the miners are moving to Venezuela. And the most expensive is in South Korea. It costs $26,170 US dollars. So like you said, a roughly a way to compare apples to apples. And if Bitcoin is currently selling at $3,300 per Bitcoin, it costs more in pretty much every country in the world in terms of electrical cost to mine a Bitcoin than it is to turn around and then sell one.
Right.
And so there are other things that come into play that this report doesn't talk about, mining fees and transaction fees that go from one place to another and how the network continues to function. But then I wanted to just go out and find out a second source for that data. And if you go to NiceHash, it's a place that sells Bitcoin mining rigs. They have a profitability calculator where you can actually select the type of device that you have or want to buy and punch in your electrical costs. And so I did that. I figured, well, let's see, if I had an Antminer, and then I looked up in Oregon right now, the cost for a kilowatt hour of electricity in Portland is 9.8 cents per kilowatt hour. And if I had a Bitmain Antminer S9 at a cost of 9.8 cents per kilowatt hour, I would lose $44 a month mining Bitcoin. That's how much I'd be throwing out the window. So,
wow. I even saw, I think it was this past week, might have been the week before, I saw an article by the guy who wrote Keras, the machine learning library on top of TensorFlow, saying that they were selling, in China, they were selling mining equipment by the pound. They basically had, it looked like those, laundry baskets of just looked like ant miners, custom ASICs that,
right.
It's not profitable. Or
well, in China, according to this report, the average electricity to mine a Bitcoin, or the cost to mine one Bitcoin in China right now on average is $3,172. So they're close to break even.
Possibly profitable.
According to this.
Yeah.
Barely profitable.
Not including some of the other fees and
Right. Which then leads me to my final note here. And this was an opinion piece. The title is basically Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Nice little clickbait.
Yeah. And it basically points out exactly what now the data is starting to show, especially as Bitcoin continues to drop. Once Bitcoin's price falls below the cost of mining, then the incentive to mine dries up. And then if no one's mining, no one's maintaining the network. And it just kind of will continue to spiral down. One of the things at the end of the article that he does talk about, though, is just that it is going to decline doesn't mean that no one's going to use it. He points to the fact that Beanie Babies still cost $5. And that tulips still trade for about $10 a bunch. So the blockchain economy is here to stay, and cryptocurrencies are here to stay. But what they are going to look like is going to be painful in the short term here, I think. Not necessarily security related. Anyway, so those are just... I don't know why.
Yeah, that's a nice little roundup of a whole bunch of articles. You keep trying to not really talk that much about Bitcoin or blockchain and failing.
I failed miserably.
That's okay. That's good. All right. Well, how about we dive into topics? Shall I go first this time, since you pretty much had that was almost a topic session in and of itself. So I have two, and they're both relatively small, but the first one that I chose was actually just released today, I think, but it was an announcement by IBM that they're divesting themselves of a number of products. So I guess the reason why this caught my eye is IBM is getting rid of Notes and Domino. Do you remember Notes?
I do, and I didn't realize it was still a thing. I thought it had gone the way of WordPerfect long ago.
You wouldn't have caught me by surprise saying that. Oh no, nobody uses that anymore. The reason why I find that Notes a thing is because when I first moved to Symantec from Hewlett Packard, I was working on a security product for Domino, or for Notes. It was an email security product, and and it had to run on a whole bunch of different platforms. And some of my friends at work still actually were on the team with me at the time. Although we no longer work for the yellow company, we work for the red company. And, I liked Domino. Domino was pretty cool. Exchange was around at the time because we had a separate group of people that worked on an Exchange product. But, Exchange blew Notes out of the water. Anyway, but so there's an end of an era. So IBM's, I forget what they bought Lotus for in the first place, but I think it was quite a large acquisition at the time. And then the second one on here that I find a little ironic is BigFix. So they're selling BigFix. BigFix is for configuration management of devices. They basically had a pretty cool technology. They called them like fixlets is what they called it, but it was basically a script that would run and would basically make sure that a particular setting was set on the computer. So you could check for you wanted a particular piece of software installed, a particular setting done. It was, in some ways it's a little primitive in that it's essentially polling, but it was polling for lots of different things, and it would quickly bring a device back into compliance if somebody tried to take it out. But it was pretty well designed security or a configuration management system. I liked it. But IBM wound up buying it for a cool $400 million, it looks like, in 2010. So, and then they've done a lot of stuff. I don't know. That seemed like they were really acquiring security technologies left and right for a long time, and now they're evidently going the other direction. And they actually had a quote in there. They say, I found this pretty ironic. The quote from IBM is all about, we're a world leader in things like cybersecurity, analytics, supply chain, and blockchain, as blah blah blah, and we believe the time is right to divest select collaboration, marketing, and commerce software assets. Okay. Which are increasingly delivered as standalone products.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. It's ironic to me. But anyway, it just seems like a passing of an age kind of thing. Yeah. I got to say, the other things that they're getting rid of, Connections, Portal, Commerce, Unica, AppScan. No, I'm not familiar.
I've never heard of any of these others.
Yeah. So, okay. Evidently, they're on the chopping block. No, not even on the chopping block. They're past the chopping block. Okay. So my second thing is an article about Windows Lite. So this is interesting in that it's not officially announced. It is this is
rumor?
I guess this is rumor. Let's see, what does he actually say? It's currently called Lite based on documentation found in the latest build. Oh, yeah. Here we go. In Microsoft's feverish attempts to shove out insider builds at an impressive rate, the company doesn't always do a great job at scrubbing the finer details from the builds. So remember how Apple released their firmware that included references to the what's their speaker?
A HomePod.
The HomePod. And they had a leak. This sounds like something similar where, they've got insider builds going out, and well, maybe there's symbols that aren't stripped or strings or something like that. It also, though, says because of this and some help from a couple of insiders. So, okay. So maybe it's also a bit of a selective leak, deliberate or not. But anyway, Windows Lite sounds a lot like Windows 10S. or RT. Right. So Microsoft, third time's the charm, maybe, at getting a locked down version of Windows that will only run apps from the App Store, that will basically compete with Chromebooks, because that is what, at least according to this article, this is squarely aimed at. So yeah, the goal of Windows Lite is to make it super lightweight, instant on, always connected, can run on any type of CPU. Knowing that this week, I'm still reading here. Knowing that this week, Qualcomm will announce a new generation of Snapdragon that can run Windows significantly better than the 835. Fully expect to see this new chip powering many of the first devices running the new OS. And they say it might not be called Windows. New name, different UI.
I wonder if Microsoft is going to go after Google's Chromebooks in the education market.
In schools?
Schools. For a cheap, always on, stripped down to doesn't do anything or does very little.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. This is interesting in that this is something that is very clearly a strong desire by Microsoft to get it. I mean, I think they look at iOS and the success of, at least from a security perspective, of iOS, and really want that as well. And they've made 2 unsuccessful stabs so far, but maybe the third time will work.
Is Windows 10S not successful? Have they already killed it? It just barely came out.
Well, it was originally planned to be a whole product, and they basically just turned it into, well, it's just a mode, and you can
you can enable it or not,
or disable it, and it is not being used for it's kind of a premier something that comes on many or any devices. It's and part of that I think is just how it was also implemented, which again, they're maybe they have a chance to take another run at it and do it better. So it'll be interesting about seeing this. Also kind of, I think, intersects with the question about powerful ARM chips that we've talked about a number of times.
Yep.
And I have not been looking or paying attention to Qualcomm Snapdragon line, but even if they don't get the A series chips, which are amazing, they could still have good enough ARM chips that if they can control what apps get onto there and how those apps are done. And remember, I think it was last week or the week before, you mentioned that Microsoft had enabled you to submit apps to the Windows App Store that supported ARM. Maybe they're seeding the App Store for things like Windows Lite.
Well, shall we move to the security part of the Mostly Security podcast?
This is security related. Okay, maybe a bit of a stretch, but okay. All right, take me to the security part of the Mostly Security podcast.
Which is going to be awesome because this is going to be the shortest section.
Oh, okay. So it's minorly security.
It's because what more can we say about the Marriott?
Oh, the Marriott
data breach.
Yes.
Right?
Oh.
It's, you Google, I don't even know which article to link to it because all the big names have huge articles on what happened, what's going on.
It was a biggie.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people, 500 million, or depending on which numbers you want to see where. And one of the things that I didn't realize was it included potentially passport numbers. So if you have registered your, with your guest rewards, they give you fields aplenty. Put in your passport, your driver's license, or whatever. If you were someone who did that, your passport number is now available. And I was not aware that it appears passport numbers are sort of like social security numbers in that they're kind of supposed to be private.
Oh.
Because Senator Chuck Schumer demanded that Marriott foot the bill for new passports for everybody. New passport numbers. It's like, really? I would get a new passport number, huh? But so there, if you want to find out or read up rather than chat here about the breach in particular, you just Google Marriott. It was actually Starwood, and just as luck would have it, or not luck would have it, at 5:21 p.m., 5 hours ago, I got my Starwood guest reservation database security incident email.
From Starwood?
From Starwood. Dear valued guest, Marriott values our guests, blah, 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 blah. Yes.
we value you as a guest. And by the way, we didn't value you enough to secure your data.
Marriott values our guests and understands the importance of protecting your personal information. The irony there is...
Oh, yes.
We have taken measures to investigate and address a data security incident involving the Starwood guest reservation database. Anyway, so I have a full email and what I can do, and I don't know why anybody pays. No one should ever have to pay for any kind of credit monitoring because you're in a security breach somewhere and they're offering it to you for free.
Right.
I don't think anyways. But so I guess really what I wanted to talk about to make this not too long here was Krebs' article. So he just has a commentary about the Marriott breach. And this is the one that if you were going to read something, go read this one. And Krebs really kind of pulls out two meta points that I think everybody should understand. He calls them two harsh realities you just need to accept. Reality number one: bad guys already have access to personal data points you may believe should be secret, but which nevertheless aren't, including your credit card information, social security number, mother's maiden name, date of birth, address, previous addresses, phone numbers, and yes, even your credit file.
Yep.
So once you internalize that things that should be secret aren't, then you can, move on to harsh reality number two.
This is the particularly harsh one.
Yes. Any data that you share with a company will in all likelihood eventually be hacked, lost, leaked, stolen, or sold, usually through no fault of your own. And if you're an American, it means, at least for the time being, your recourse to do anything about when it happens is limited or nil. So I think the real meta point there is, so when you go in to register for a new account or sign up for some service and they take you through the create your password and what's your mother's maiden name, your security questions. Your security questions are probably, unless they're completely random or arbitrary, probably already
right
out there and available and easily correlated to you.
Mm-hmm.
So one strategy, I guess, that I use, because when I get these, it says, what was your favorite, or what was your first car, or what was your hometown, or what was, whatever it is. My strategy for those is I usually pick the noun of whatever it is. So your first car,
mm-hmm.
and that's the first word, and then I do a dash, and then I have just a set of random characters that I then store in my password manager tied to that account. So that when it asks me that question again, I will know that, if it says car, I need to go to my password manager and find the one that's car. So it's not Ford, or it's not,
right.
Oldsmobile Bug, or what's your favorite baseball team, or whatever. None of these security questions are really secure anymore, unless you don't actually answer the question.
Right.
You play the politician and don't actually answer the question you were asked. Answer the question you should have been asked.
Block and bridge.
Yeah. And then the second point is, if there is two-factor authentication at all, figure out how to use that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That is a lot of work for the security questions, though. Well played.
My only problem now is if my password manager ever gets pwned, I'm hosed.
You are up the creek.
Because that's where everything is. But I have a really big password that secures that and locks it, and you do the best you can.
Right.
So I am not worried. Starwood has sent me the email, or Marriott has sent me the email saying, hey, go change stuff. I'm not worried that even if they have my raw password in plain text, it
was only for
depending
them.
on when it was, it either is a random jumble of letters that I've already changed, or if it's before I got onto the password manager bandwagon, it was probably my simple dummy password. That one, I don't use that one anymore. So,
right.
Anyways, there you go.
I have not gotten a mail from Marriott, although I should have. I get I get marketing emails from them all the time, so I'm sure I'm in that breach.
Well, maybe yours is coming. Maybe they're processing half a billion emails.
That's a lot of emails to do.
Clearly, they were going by first name, so they're not to the J's yet. They've hit the E's.
You're right. Sorry, not the otherwise you would have been lost with the Wheelers.
That's right.
All right. Well, hey, something fun. Let's see. I guess since
you're going to continue your Microsoft theme.
Yeah, I am. Look at that. I'm like Mr. Microsoft today. My something fun for this week is the fact that Microsoft is open sourcing WPF, WinForms, WinUI, which are old, but I guess I don't know how popular they are these days. But I think still probably pretty well used libraries that Microsoft developed to build UIs on top of Windows. So this includes WPF is Windows Presentation Foundation, Windows Forms, and the XAML library, which I guess anybody who has even built like a token app on top of Microsoft in the last 5 or 10 years has probably used one of those technologies, probably several of them. So, Microsoft, I think, is playing it really, really smart. They are, by the way, I think at least they were at one point in time this week, more valuable than Apple. Right?
Yeah, I did see that.
So
I did see that.
Microsoft. Satya Nadella is rocking it up at Microsoft. But one of the things they've done is they've realized that people aren't with us because we have the best proprietary software. They're with us because business reasons and they can open source. They have so much collateral to open source. It's amazing, and they're doing a great job. So anyway, this looks like this was just a little thing that I thought was cool.
Yeah. Well, to swing the pendulum back the other direction, my something fun is an Apple related item.
All right, Microsoft and Apple sitting in a tree.
Right. So this is actually an article from earlier, a couple months ago, I guess, at this point. But it was an oral history of Apple's infinite loop. It's a Wired article by a guy who's been writing about Apple stuff for 30 years. And it just kind of goes through and pulls quotes from various executives and various well-known people in the Apple sphere in the early days of Apple, with different little anecdotes. And I thought it was just interesting to kind of get a background of the history. Reminded me a little bit, it's slightly different than the website folklore.org.
Oh, I've read a number of good things out there.
Yeah, that has one of my favorite developer quips in it. Oh. But it was just another one. The just kind of fun to read about the different views and people who came in and left, and some fun stories about the making of a $1 trillion company.
Oh, that's cool.
So
yeah, not $1 trillion anymore, but that's yeah. I'm laughing because I read something today, which was a story about a meeting at Apple sometime in the late 80s or early 90s, where it was kind of a who did it. So it was the story was where some guys talking about this new technology, giving basically, it sounded like a tech talk or something like that about, or a planning talk for something they were going to build, and how it was going to be all object oriented. And this guy pipes up from the back of the room and says, but you don't actually have objects, right? And you don't have inheritance, and you don't have polymorphism. This is not object oriented. And evidently the guy just kind of blustered through and or something along those lines, and said, well, who are you to say that? And it was Alan Kay, and Alan Kay, he's anyway, Alan Kay evidently was something like, well, I kind of coined the term, so I have some opinions about what being object oriented actually means. Anyway, yeah.
That's awesome. And just not to leave anybody hanging, what my favorite story is out of the folklore.org, it's the negative 2,000 lines of code.
Yes.
And the gist of the story
I remember
was,
that one. I read that.
When IBM came in, the management wanted to try to manage productivity, so they would make engineers at the end of the week basically write and say how many lines of code that they wrote that week. And one of the guys was so mad, he said, look, I optimized a bunch. So he submitted the number negative 2,000
That's right.
on how many lines of code he wrote that week. And they just stopped asking the guy to fill out the form after that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well done. All right, man.
All right. Well, safe travels.
Yep. Yeah. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.
See you, John.
Bye.